Well, hello there. Hello indeed. This is the podcast of Wednesday's Child. And I'm giving you a chance to listen to the silence. The silence is important because if you're watching on screen, so you can also see this on YouTube as well, it's me on my Todd. There's no Sarah and there's no other fellow presenter or anything today. You've just got me. And it wasn't intended to be like that up until maybe about half an hour ago. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to have a one-to-one conversation with yourself. So perhaps to make myself feel ever so slightly less lonely, if you look behind me, oh, look at that. How cool is that? Sorry for those of you that are listening to this in your earphones and you can't do that. So if you look behind me, you would see that the two ladies propped up against the wall. That picture will be reminiscent of what you'll see on our website. And I hope for many of you who listen to this podcast and say, okay, so these guys have a website too. Like, where have you been? Yes, please go and have a look at the website. I sometimes wonder whether we stumble into a brand in one medium or other, and then we forget to connect with them in other ways. So it may be for you that you've come to us via the podcast, and maybe you've heard us talk about our social media. So perhaps you visited us on Instagram or Facebook, and you've asked to be a friend on the Facebook community, which is fabulous, by the way. It's really, really great. But it is also really good to go to, I was going to say slightly more old-fashioned, not that many people would say websites are necessarily like old-fashioned, but spend a little bit of time on the website as well if you can, because there's a lot of just ideas, insights, personal stories and experiences which will really help you, whether you're somebody who's going through an eating disorder journey or you're somebody who just for the very first time has heard about Wednesday's Child and has heard about an eating disorder and is trying to help somebody with that and just wants to think, well, where can I go with this? What information can I find out? We're a really good place to start. I wouldn't say we have the world's greatest supply of resource. And as many of you all know, we only started in 2019, but we're a sort of fierce and ambitious organisation that's built up our catalogue of information very quickly in that time. So you will see personal stories of how people have recovered and how they're coping with that. You'll hear from parents and you'll hear from therapists and specialists, experts in the space of eating disorders and body image issues. And they share their thoughts as well. So all of those bits and pieces, whether you're somebody who likes to read or you like to take things in an audio way or a visual way, I would hope that you would feel that Wednesday's Child provides you the opportunity to do that. So have a shop around if you haven't done before, but of course you can listen to this all the way through first. And some of you do this while you're multitasking. I know I do a couple of sort of befriending partnerships at the moment, and I know those people often tell me that, well, I've got you in my ears as I'm heading to work, or I do it when I'm kind of having a bit of a walk at the weekends or when I'm on the way to see my friend. So, and it's always a pleasure to know that I get to take a little bit of time in your earlobe. And as I say, it's just all me today. So I think, no reason to kind of hide away given the fact that we haven't got a special sort of presenter or expert on today. And in actual fact, coming up in the next few weeks, we've got a number of experts and specialists who I really, really do want to jump on and share with you. And they pick up on some of the things that we've talked about over the last few episodes. And they are things like depression and can you treat eating disorders with depression medication, which I think is just a really important topic because so many of you have discussed whether you feel, is it actually aiding your recovery from an eating disorder to be taking antidepressants? And then we're also speaking to some people who are specialists in exercise post-recovery. And again, you'll know that we've done a podcast not that many months ago with a fitness expert who only deals with people that are in recovery from an eating disorder. So she approaches it in a really, really different way. We're also going to be talking about getting into holidays and hobbies and pastimes and things that kind of validate you and give you a new sense of purpose in your recovery. So we're going to be picking up on that some more as well, which is obviously really timely because here we are talking in the middle of August and it's a hot one. Blimey, it's a hot one. I'm not sure if you can hear the droning in the background, and maybe I'll find that out at the end of this, but I do have a fan. So if you think this is special effects, me kind of, wanting to blow beachy waves over my shoulders, it's not the case at all. I am just in an attic of a house and it is flipping hot. So the only way of keeping me cool for long enough to do this podcast recording is to have a fan rotating in the corner, but there is a little bit of a hum to it. So I find it quite meditative if I'm trying to sleep, but I'm not sure it works on a podcast, but we'll see. You'll tell me afterwards. Okay, so I thought what we'd do while you've only got me chatting away in your ears is talk about some of the recent post-bag drops, as I like to refer them, that we've had in over the last couple of weeks. And these are where people just get in touch and say, help me, or, you know, can you give me some insight, or I would like some more understanding of ... So I'm going to pick up on a couple of those things. I'm going to start with Louise. So Louise got in touch, and she is 37, and she's 37 and she had recovered fully from an eating disorder. And now she's kind of hit a mind thunk, which, you know, kind of makes no sense. But she's just hit this roadblock where she's saying, you know, I did really well and I was doing really well with recovery, but now I just don't know who I am. She knows that she doesn't want to go into the kind of parental route. She's not got any particular partnership. And she's just feeling like she can't find her own independent identity. And this one really struck home for me, because I realized that in my recovery, you go through a period of time where you're very proud and you embrace the fact that actually you're living a far better life than you did when you had your eating disorder. But there are times when you suddenly get that realization of, well, where am I? What am I? What defines me? What do I like? What do I not like? And I think a key part to recovery, and you and I and, you know, everybody out there in the community, we talk about the very different elements of recovery that it takes to heal fully from an eating disorder. So we've always said, you know, that's just not just about the nutritional rehabilitation, so the kind of food and nutrition side of things. It's also about neural rewiring. So it's about kind of cognitively reworking yourself and being back into the world that you should have been, restoring yourself fully. And that's not just your physical body, it's not just your nutritional intake, it's restoring your mind, rebuilding those wired processes that should never have been undone in the first place. So that bit is really important. But the activity bit, the lifestyle bit, the identification bit, the bit that we, rightly or wrongly, validate ourselves against is really important. And it comes up time and time again for so many people. Some people hit that place really early. So some people will go through an eating disorder at 14, 15, 16. And at 18, just as they're going to university, they're like, oh, I kind of really want to know who I am. And I'm a bit nervous about going and meeting loads of people. But I want to come into my own now. How do I go about that? How do I find what kind of people I like and what kind of hobbies I want to do? How do I know whether I'm just choosing things for the hell of it? And so some people come at it at that kind of early age. But trust me, we also come to help people who are in their 50s, 60s, and indeed 70s, who have had even more reason where they've felt defined by their eating disorder. We help people who've had an eating disorder all the way through their adult life, even where they've maybe conceived, they've had children, and then those adult children have left home. And then however it's happened, however it's come about, they've recovered, and then they've thought, and what now? Sometimes what emerges is that relationship I was around. It might be a marriage, or it might be a sexual partnership, or it might just be a friendship, or it might just be about the friendships and relationships you have with, you know, children, siblings, spouses, partners, whatever. Suddenly there's a reason to rethink that and to think, oh, I don't know if this sounds really cool, but I'm not sure if that's the person that I ultimately want in my life. So when I look at kind of questions about this, sort of how do you define yourself and what's next for me, I would say to yourself, it happens to everybody at all age and stage in life. So don't think this is only because of eating disorder recovery. And I think you should stop trying to dumb it down and think to yourself, well, I am where I am, and I should like what I did before my eating disorder, and I'm limited for my options now. Because as I say, whatever decade you're in, whatever age and stage in your life, there's new opportunities to invent yourself and to find the things that nurture your soul. And you know, we talk enough about nurturing our body and our brain, don't we, in eating disorder recovery, but now it's about nurturing your soul. And often what comes out of that is hobbies. And I know Sarah's going to talk a bit more about that in a coming episode, because she's really sort of found herself a new hobby that she loves. So hobbies come out of that, in particular because when we're eating disorder recovery, sometimes we've had to let go of maybe the physical activities that we were compelled to do in our eating disorder mindset. And then we recognize that I'm not even sure if I like running. I don't even know if I want to cycle for the rest of my life. And so we start to think, actually, if I think mindfully about this, is there a sport or a pastime or a hobby that I would much rather do? So I would say consider those things and separate out what did the eating disorder want you to do to what is it now that you would like to do. I think the other thing I would say is about the kind of the clothes that define you and the way that you feel you present yourself to the world. I had a conversation with someone recently who said, I've always felt that I've ended up buying the clothes that other people felt suited me, or interestingly, which represented what they like to wear. So if they were kind of the person that liked to dress top to toe in black, you know, I kind of take on that persona. Or if they were a person who was dead sporty looking and always in kind of track pants and athleisure wear, then, you know, that person would morph into that too, because they weren't equipped enough to know what would better suit them or what did they genuinely want. Or it could be that it's more the floaty dresses and the very feminine look, because that's how the person that they spent a lot of time with, they chose to dress that way too. And it stands to reason, doesn't it? You know, when we're recovering from an eating disorder, how can we very clearly and comprehensively define what our body is most suited into in terms of fashion, when we've done so much in our life to change the shape of our body or to mistrust our body or dislike our body? So naturally, clothes has just become the thing that either has masked us or has just been whatever was left on the hanger that would just about fit the body that I had created by the manipulation I had caused it in an eating disorder. So all of these factors are about the new personality and persona that defines you in recovery. I would also just caution understanding what are you trying to create, and is there a need to create a persona? So don't make it too much of a deliberate and forced intention to be somebody. This thing tends to evolve. You will find over time that you start developing friendships with people that perhaps hadn't been your kind of natural social leaning, but it's happening because your brain thinks differently. You're a more engaged person. You might have different political views, different kind of leisure pastimes, and different things that inspire or aspire you. So it's natural that you'll end up spending time with different people. So don't try to force that or manipulate that too much. But what I would say around doing that, and going back to our writer of this question all the way along, is absolutely embrace the opportunity to consider what it is you want for your life and what that might look like. So whether you need to journal that over a period of time and just kind of make note of, actually, do you know what? And I did that today. I felt really good about it. When I wore those clothes today, oh my God, that really lifted my spirits. Just note how your progression is kind of taking you on a journey. And then over time, just say to yourself, have I, in the last week, in the last month, in the last 3 months, have I sought to try something new? Because the problem we have is when we get stuck with not seeking to do something new in terms of hobbies or pastimes or activities. That's not to say we must all be validated by doing a hobby that we do 6 times a week or whatever. That not at all. But actually, if there is an opening in your world that you feel would be better served, particularly where it brings you into company and companionship and some way of kind of embracing, I don't know, the natural environment or whatever, that has to be a good thing. So look for those opportunities, but also do not force it down a path. Do not think that you need to be the one that takes up wild swimming because everybody else is talking about wild swimming. It may just be that you just learned that actually I've always loved animals, and you know, maybe, and by the way, this isn't me because I never have, but as in I've loved animals, but I'm not the bit I'm about to talk about. Maybe you were someone that had, as kids, right from a very young age, you had guinea pigs or you had rabbits, or you were particularly keen on, you know, volunteering in your local animal shelter when you were a really, you know, teenager or something at school. Well, revisit that. Maybe it's something that actually you want to get involved. Maybe there's a local RSPCA and they do want kind of trustees, volunteers, board members, somebody to do the local fete. Those things can really fulfill you. And they're so separate from the world you've been living in. So look at all those opportunities and embrace them, and stop trying to define yourself into a particular box that says this is recovered me and recovered me must look like this. But equally, don't stay stuck in the I'm the person who had the eating disorder, so my life is self-limited, because it doesn't need to be. I hope that helps. I'm just trying to make you think of all the aspects of what defines one and also kind of gives you some validation. And I'm always very clear, we must be clear about doing too much external validation. So whenever you're choosing to do things, try to self-validate as well. Don't look to say, if somebody sees me learning to do horse riding, paddleboarding, if I post these pictures on my Instagram, does this make me a better person? Have I validated myself? Well, no, you're trying to validate yourself externally. True recovery from an eating disorder is finding the world that brings you joy, finding the one that brings you happiness and allows you to embrace being in that fully happy, healthy body that gives you the world that you deserve. I really hope that helps. Okay. The other email that sprung out at me was from a parent, and they were saying about what do I look for in terms of treatment and support for my child that has an eating disorder. This varies so much. We get those kind of questions every single day, and it might be a parent who's got a 4-year-old child, a 15-year-old going through exams, or a child that's moved back home at 26, is desperately poorly and waiting to go to hospital. And, you know, again, there is no kind of steadfast, this is what you should do if that person needs support from an eating disorder. So I would say, okay, where does it start? Okay, look at who that individual is, the age group that they're at. Consistently try to get a picture of whether that person has deteriorated in their behaviors and habits in their relationship with food for a period of time. If it's a young child and they're at school, you might want to have some really sort of delicate conversations with them about how they're feeling about their food, their sort of approach to exercise and movement. And then you might also want to think, okay, what has the school noticed? And I know it's really difficult as a parent when you think, I don't know if I really want to get the school involved in this, but the school being involved in your child's care, treatment, signposting in terms of getting recovery from an eating disorder is really critical, because let's face it, how many hours does that school see your child? Teachers are probably spending way more intensive hours with your child than you are. And we would hope, wouldn't we, that so many schools would be on the phone to you if they did have fears or concerns. But just in case they haven't, it is often really worth having that conversation. Usually there's a pastoral lead or a school nurse and matron or something, and you can say, I'm just a bit concerned about this. Does this tally with things that you're seeing? And actually they might say things that completely put your mind at rest. But if not, and it correlates, then you can think, okay, is now the time to have a conversation with my GP? So I pick up the phone to something like, you know, BEAT or Wednesday's Child as a voluntary sector organisation who can help give us a bit of steering as to where to head next and how do we go forward. Sometimes I would say with a child, chucking them straight into therapy for an eating disorder, depending how young they are, isn't always helpful. So parental therapy on eating disorders can be really helpful. When we talk about therapy as parents, we're not necessarily saying, oh, we're going to rake over the coals what your relationship was like with eating and food and exercise. Often what we're talking about is how can we help you better arm your toolkit to understand what you're dealing with at home around an eating disorder, what the behaviours of your loved one is, and how can you help them manage that without things blowing up in the family environment, which is really, really important. If that person is older, so if that person like is a teenager and is at school, again, we can bring the school involved in that, but also we see it quite a lot at university. If by the time they're a university student, you want to be having that conversation with that individual and saying, you know, is study becoming too difficult for you? Is this something that we need to take time out and look at this as a family? I'm here for you. I can support you. What kind of support and treatment do you think you need? Really nurture that person in the space. It's really difficult because, you know, how I know that my family went through this with me at university, and I was very stubborn, knew my own mind, but I was also in the grips of a devastating illness, and I didn't want to hear that it was time for me to stop university, and I didn't want them telling me what my treatment pathway should be. But equally, I needed to hear their fears, their concerns, their anxieties, and it made me recognise that, yes, I was poorly. Actually, this went beyond food behaviours. I was very poorly and I needed help. So for me, I chose to continue at university. I'm not going to sit here and argue whether that was right or wrong. In a lot of cases, when I speak to families, I say, actually, maybe pause education, because I think it can be a distraction from just getting well. And then you need to look at, do you need kind of external support as well? Because can the family on its own manage with effectively hospital at home? And is there more of a need for day services or an inpatient unit? And, you know, you're going to need to put all the pieces of the jigsaw together and have conversations with specialists if you think it has deteriorated to that point. But remember, again, you know, this is a young adult who is in danger of losing such a chunk of their life if we don't apply early intervention and do the right thing for that person as quickly as we can. So just The slight difference between a much younger child at school and somebody, say, at university, is that you're involving them much, much more in their support and signposting. And also when you're reaching that age, I would always say when you're dealing with somebody of that age, really just help them focus on their aspirations and their ambitions. And you've heard me say this before, but it's not what's the matter with you, but it's what matters to you. So keep thinking, what matters to my child? Is it that they achieve this degree, that they go on to be a vet, a doctor, or that they go on to establish their own business or run their own fashion line, whatever it is? Help them focus on that, because getting them out of that fog of the eating disorder that in the moment feels like the most important thing that they commit to, actually reminding them about their ambitions and their dreams can remind them to stay focused into recovery. And then if you're dealing with somebody who's an adult who's had an eating disorder for a long time and then has kind of retreated back into it, I think maybe it's time to say, are we in that awful, awful situation where we're in the revolving door with this person? Did they have an eating disorder years ago? Did they get treatment? Did they come out of services and they just couldn't manage in the wider world? And Sarah and I have talked about this a lot, haven't we, where people do come out of that inpatient unit and very little occupational therapy is given in an awful lot of cases. Too much focus on BMI, discharge too early, lack of continuity support. That person, maybe they've gone to go and move back into a flat on their own, or they've maybe gone back into the family house for a bit, and then a year later they had a relationship, so they moved in with that person, but when that broke up, the distress and the mayhem of the relationship breakdown meant they were cooking for themselves, and oh my God, actually I don't love myself anymore because I'm not in that relationship. And all of those little habits about an eating disorder creep back in. Well, in that case, where do we stop the rot? How do we make sure that that person isn't going to descend all the way back into that spiral? The quicker we do that, the quicker we identify this person is not coping and needs our love and support, and possibly professional support in doing that, the more quickly we can do that, the better. And many of you will be listening to this and saying, well, yes, I wish, but getting treatment and support in my region is very, very difficult. And I'm not sitting here saying, you know, I'm not going to tell a lie and say, oh, no, it's really easy if you live in this part of the country or whatever, because actually there will be some parts of the country where it's better than others. But in a lot of our country at the moment, and sadly, probably it's reflected globally, it is really tough to get that treatment. I would say even if you're going to pay, I was just about to say if you're not paying, but actually even if you're paying, it's really hard to get in certain treatment units. And the backlog post-COVID has still made that really, really tricky. But that doesn't mean you should give up trying, and it doesn't mean you should give up trying to find other resources. And always come and talk to people like myself at Wednesday's Child and say, I realise we're on a waiting list. It looks like we're going to be waiting 12 weeks, 16 weeks. What can we do to supplement that? Is there a support group online? Is there something that you could help me find in the local area that I could attend? Is there one-to-one session that I could do? Could I get a befriending match for my loved one to see them through for this period? So again, make the conversation open, try and throw as many things at it as you can, and don't feel kind of stuck into thinking, well, now I've just got to sit it out until the waiting list gets better in the region that I'm in, because that doesn't help anyone, does it? So really, really hope that helps. Another one I had was from a guy, and he was saying that he's married somebody who he knows historically had an eating disorder. He's never had the conversation with her about where that leaves her fertility. They'd been trying for 2 years. He's not raised the subject, and nor has she, that perhaps the eating disorder might have caused an impact on that. And he was just sort of saying, how do I approach that? Should I approach that? Would that be really hurtful to say it? And I suppose the answer is in the question, really. You know that how much you adore that person, and you know she potentially, if she thinks that yeah, I mean, you didn't say how long she had experienced an eating disorder for. So we might be talking about something that was dealt with very early and very young and has never actually fully disrupted her ovulation or her menstruation. So hopefully she's got a really fit and capable body. And don't forget, you know, if you guys have been trying, if you've been at it like rabbits even for the last couple of years, I can't believe I just said that on the podcast. Oh my goodness, it's too much talk about rabbits and guinea pigs in this podcast. Yeah, no matter how much you've been trying, sometimes it just takes people a while. And in those couple of years, my God, we've been through it in society, haven't we? There's been lots of distress and stress going on for different families and for individuals. So it's been all during the COVID thing. I don't know, but maybe your situation means you've had loved ones that have been poorly, you've been worried to death yourselves about getting COVID, you've maybe lost jobs or feared for your jobs. Now we're going into a cost of living crisis. all of those things affect our stress and hormone levels. So this could be completely unrelated to an eating disorder that your partner may not have fallen pregnant yet. So I would say don't threaten stress just yet. But if you get to the point where you feel, and you've got to make that mutual decision, haven't you? When is it right to say, let's go and have a conversation with a doctor? And I don't think that is one person's choice. I think it's a mutual thing, because you both need to know you're as invested emotionally, physically, mentally in wanting to be parents at that time. Then I would say when the time is right and you both feel that's necessary, then you go and have those conversations. And if during those conversations it comes up that the historic background medically included, it included that person having an eating disorder. I mean, I don't know, maybe you might have been an athletic cyclist and maybe there's something to do with you being a cyclist, because, I hear that's an issue as well. I don't know. So all I would say is, like, let's not write your fertility off altogether to do with somebody's history of an eating disorder. But moving on from that, if you are with somebody who has had a history of an eating disorder, I fully understand that you may have a little bit of angst about A, what it means for fertility, but B, what it would mean for that person getting pregnant and how they might deal with that. And whether there are issues that you should be aware of. And I would draw your focus and attention, just one more thing you would have found on our website, or even Indeed, obviously, if you follow a lot of our social media, we talk a lot about perinatal mental health and perinatal eating disorders, because it is something that we stumbled upon at Wednesday's Child. And wonderful Abby at Wednesday's Child has just thrown so much energy into training midwives and health visitors in understanding how an eating disorder history affects people in pregnancy or early motherhood, and how even if people haven't had an eating disorder, actually falling pregnant and becoming a mother and going through that, not just the body changes, but lots of things that change for you hormonally, can impact how you feel about yourself and can actually trigger an eating disorder. So I would just urge you to kind of find out a little bit more about the work that we do around that. And if you're somebody that would like us to add you to the next group of a kind of webinar session that we do about perinatal health and eating disorders, we'd really love to hear from you. So I'll just plug the email address, as I always do throughout this podcast. That's hello@wednesdayschild.co.uk. So yeah, we've got plenty of resources on that. And the final one I was just going to pick up on, because I love this topic, and because we're seeing some traction again this year, which is perhaps not that sort of surprising at this time of year, is about education and eating disorders. So just another contact that I had from a school, which was about what can we do to teach more education to not only our pupils, but also our school leaders and our parents about eating disorders as we look towards the autumn term of 2022. So we've been back in touch with the school, and we have with a number of schools actually, and we're doing a lot of work in this space. And can I just state for the record, that's independent schools and state schools. And I would urge you, if you are involved in a school, a college, a sixth form of any kind, higher education institution, if you do not think your school leaders, your pastoral leads, your matrons within boarding houses, or your school nurses, if you do not think they feel particularly competent to talk about eating disorders and to support people, or that they'd just like some other external support if they need to signpost people, that's what we're here for. We do a lot of work. We have our own school's protocol. So we do things like we will go in and audit a school refectory, and we'll look at, like, how are you serving food? And is there an area where that you could take somebody who's got an eating disorder, is in recovery, you could take them out of that really busy, bustling canteen and you could let them eat in an area that's more comfortable for them. What kind of food are you serving, and what way are you doing it? Is it in a way that they feel really kind of, there's too many eyes on them and it's too much of a distressing environment? As we all know, aspects like kind of autism traits kind of often come out when people are going through an eating disorder. So sitting in crowded, noisy areas, lots of eyes, lots of ears, it can feel too much for somebody that's trying to do the best they can to recover from an eating disorder. So we do audits around those things. And we do also provide that very specialist eating disorder support and education for education leaders, and, as this person rightly sort of suggests, also for parents. And we've done parent evening talks, and we do those online, but we also do those in person. So I would urge you to do that. And we've created some curriculum material as well. So if you want to introduce discussions about body image and eating disorders at school, we've got that. That's kind of it's pitched for the right age group to be discussing it, and we can also do sort of individual group sessions if that's what you would like us to do, sort of tailored for your particular school. Just depending on where you are, we'll find the facilitators to do that, and they'll be teaching it according to the Wednesday's Child method. So I hope that helps. So that was it. That was you. That was me. That was only me hosting your Wednesday's Child podcast for this time. I would urge you, as ever, if you've got a personal story of an eating disorder journey, or you have a question and you just want to pop that over to us, then please get in touch. As I say, we've got lots of guest people coming on the podcast over the next couple of weeks, and I hope you're really going to enjoy the insight that they bring. But as I say, that's never to say we don't welcome new suggestions. So whatever your field of expertise, whatever your lived experience, if you would like to spend some time with us on the podcast, then get in touch. Likewise, if you're a professional, if you're a parent, if you're an individual going through eating disorder recovery and you just think, I've looked at some of your services online, I think I could really benefit from them, I'd love to be befriended or find some therapy, have a chat with us. Let's see what we can do for you. So, going to love it and leave you all. Thank you for letting me invade your ears for a short time on the Wednesday's Child podcast. Once again, email address is hello@wednesdayschild.co.uk. For now, take care of you, keep focused on recovery, and I'll see you again really soon.